Welcome back to Benton Homestead. Today we're going to do some architectural archaeology. We're going to take a look back in time at this house, at what we think are the various remodeling stages since it was built in 1940. So first let's take a look at what we know based on some historical documents. This booklet is a document that we received once the house was purchased and registered in our names. We have two of these because Evan and I are both 50-50 ownership of the house. But let's look inside. It's got some really cool information inside, including this diagram of the house, but we're looking at the very last page. This is where we find some useful information on the last page. This shows that the house was built in the year Showa 15, which is 1940, but then we have 3 additional dates here, and these are dates of construction. So I'm assuming that this means that they changed the house significantly enough that they probably had to go down to City Hall and get a permit or something like that, and that's why we have historical record. So the house was built in 1940, there was change in 1955, 1957, and 1964. We're lucky to have hundreds and hundreds of photographs dating back decades here in the house, but they're mostly of the former owners and their families and their vacations around Japan. These are the pictures that I've pulled out that were taken here at the house. This stack shows interesting things about the house as far as decorations and how it was used for events, but we're going to take a look at these ones that I've pulled out here. Each one of these photos is helpful because they each show something that no longer exists. Here you can see what the front of the house looked like before it had that cinder block structure that we plan to remove. Here you can see on the left side of the house, there's a tile roof eave underneath the second story window that is no longer there, and we would like to put this back. And this one's a little more difficult to see. I need to scan so I can zoom in closer, but I believe that this photo shows that there was a peaked tile roof where the cinder block garage now stands. These two photos show what the original wall looked like in front of the house. You can see on the left-hand side there that the wall originally had a little tile roof on top of it, and it was a lower wall, which actually is exactly what Evan and I envisioned, to eventually replace the wall that's there right now that's not very pretty. Here we have a color photograph that shows the inside of the wall before it was replaced with the current one. This one's cool because it shows the inside of the current wall as well as our gate when it was brand new, light colored wood. But what I really like about this photo is that it shows the terraced hillside behind. That mountain is now completely forest, but at this point in time it was still many citrus orchards. And also the peak showing up above the wall of the neighbor's house is the original house before the current house was built in its place. And of course we have many group photos taking place in front of our door which show the old sign that used to be there that says Matsuoka Ryokan. Alright, we're going to start out here in the front of the house, and I know this is going to be a little bit complicated to show you. It's much easier to see here in person. So I'm going to try and use those historical photos as best as I can and walk you around the house and show you what we think is the history of the renovation progress. If you've watched our previous walkthrough videos of this house, you know that it was formerly an inn and that the layout is quite sprawling. You can tell when you walk around the house that it wasn't initially planned this way. What you can see here is that this front structure was the core of the house originally. This up here is the attic space. This is where we have those huge beams. And then this section over here, as well as the upstairs in the back of the house that we can't see from here, were all added at later dates. Now initially I thought that this slate gray and that color in the back were sort of the same color, but they're not. So now that we know there was the original construction in 1940, plus permits filed for 3 major expansions, we've determined that the slate gray is the original, followed by the white, followed by this yellow color, followed by, in the 60s, the cinder block structures. One thing we found really helpful is to look very carefully at the roof lines and how they intersect with each other. Japanese traditional houses do have interesting roof lines, but they're usually done in a really just artistic and beautiful way, and they don't often have impeded sections where they sort of bump into other structures. So we know from the historic photo that when this second floor was originally built, which was built in 1957, it had a nice eave overhang underneath these windows that matched this one. So this little part of the roof here that looks very confusing and odd actually made sense in the historic photo. Now we know that there's some extensive water damage that happened here, which is why the siding has been replaced with this metal siding, and presumably that's why the whole eave structure was taken down from here. But you can also just tell by looking at this that this eave here was not designed with this future expansion in place. So this is a good angle to see that this structure here was once its own fully self-contained house. And again, right up here is where the most massive beams in the house are. This is where our little attic space is. So that was the original footprint of the house. Then this up here, as well as this whole structure, was all added on later. Now before I pop around to the back side of the house, this is a good spot to talk briefly about the wall in front. We've said from the beginning that this wall really detracts from the look and the feel of the house, as it sort of really hides the house and some of the architectural details behind it. So we were overjoyed when we found some historic photos that showed what the original wall looked like. This one isn't actually original. So now let's round the corner to the back side of the house, and there's a few telltale things back here that are quite interesting. So from this angle, what we're seeing is downstairs is the kitchen here, and then upstairs here, here, and here are all tatami rooms, bedrooms, and the former guest rooms of the inn. Now, upon first look, we just assumed that all of this was built at once, and now we're able to see the difference between the 1955 edition and the 1957 edition. So let's look closer. So this is probably the best angle to show you that this was the original house, and then this is the addition of the guest rooms when it turned into an inn. So you can see how they're just sort of two major structures sitting next to each other and sort of interlocked. Inside these lower windows is the current main room of our kitchen, and you can see here this is the secondary kitchen room, and it's got that original slate blue and the vertical wood slats. Keep these in your mind. They're going to come in handy later when we go inside the house. So we know that this room was original. Here's the add-on where again we're finding white is the first edition, and then down there yellow is the second edition. Here we are right where the white 1955 edition meets the yellow 1957 edition. So once we get inside, I'll show you evidence that we have that there was actually an exterior courtyard here and a long walkway between the house and the wall where this hallway now is. And to support that, we also see that the outside wall ends here. This is the foundation that the house is built on down here. They built this wall around their house with a nice little walkway. You've got a good number of feet between the wall and the house. And then when they built this second story, they actually built out to the wall, incorporating the wall into the structure. Let's go take a look at what this looks like from the inside. Okay, so here we are. We're standing inside the kitchen room, looking down the back hallway. So the room that we're in right now is the white on the outside 1955 expansion. And this is one of the first cool things that we figured out trying to reverse engineer the construction in this house. And this is the original slate gray, the blue walls here with the vertical wood slats. That's a nice, obviously exterior wooden window. So we can see that even though we're in an interior hallway here, this was originally an exterior wall of the house. So this would have been a little pathway between the house and that cement wall that we were just looking at from the outside. So here we see where that wall ends. On the right is the 1955 expansion, on the left is the 1957 expansion. If I zoom back here, we can see that right where the two meet is where they have this walking path to an exterior door. And we were told that these two downstairs rooms were the personal family bedrooms. And stepping back here into the guest space, there's a door here that closed off guest space from the personal space. So again, this door to the outside goes straight to the personal family rooms. Then down around the corner is the back entrance to the kitchen. And you can tell that this was actually cut off from the edge here, as well as from some signs on the floor here. You can see that it ran along this length. It does really make sense that they would just enclose this back hallway and make it part of the house for many reasons. And one of them is mostly support for the weight of adding a second story. So what we're looking at here is the underside of the upstairs hallway, and then this is underneath the beginning of the tatami mats in those guest rooms up there. Let's go take a quick look at the differences upstairs. So the differences between the two sections of upstairs rooms are subtle, but there definitely are some differences, and they all happen right at the same line, both inside the house, outside the house, upstairs and downstairs. There's definitely a line right here along this wall. We've got a floor height that doesn't match up. We've got another previously exterior window on the inside. And this is where they would have had to knock out part of this wall in order to access the second expansion in 1957. So you can see the plaster here is different. The 1955 area is all yellow inside. It's smooth like a chalkboard. And the 1957 rooms are all this textured shikui with the sparkles. Also, the floorboards themselves are a slightly different size and a slightly different color. So now let's walk back down this hallway and we'll take a look here. So you can see, again, blue and wood. This was an outside wall. Yellow here, this was added later. And you know from an earlier video that this yellow space here is actually just an enclosed, empty space that was built into the house. So for example, here we've got in this corner the original blue on the right-hand side, the original exterior wooden window here on the right, and then on the left we've got this later added yellow wall. And also you can just tell by looking at this with a little bit of scrutiny that they probably wouldn't cover up this little edge of the window here. Here's the other side of the same corner, so now it's reversed. We've got the original blue on the left and the added on yellow on the right. And you can see that on the left there, that's a much more solid support beam. And then on the right, it's just basically a 2x4 tacked in front of it, and that's gonna support the addition of the wall and the little wooden door here. So here you can see the outside of the second kitchen room. I've showed you this earlier in the video from the street level. This has the original slate blue right there. And then if you follow that to the inside of the kitchen, this would have also been outside. In fact, I just noticed this little detail, which makes that even more plausible, is that we've got a continuation of these vertical wooden exterior wall slats behind this cupboard here inside the kitchen. So this was sort of an inner courtyard, or perhaps they had a small separate kitchen building, which was fairly common, or even an outdoor kitchen back in 1940. So from 1940 to 1955, what is now the kitchen was once outside. So looking at this little section of the house, which is where the living room meets the now kitchen, with those sort of historical goggles, it actually makes the layout make a lot more sense. When you first start looking at this house, it's sort of like the Winchester Mystery House, and there's just random doors in weird places. But if we consider that this would have been outside, these tiles here in the kitchen would not have been here, this would have been the step up. Traditionally, the Japanese houses often have an exterior hallway called an engawa, which would have separated the outside of the house from those interior doors. So if we can consider this as the former engawa, it really does make more sense. And looking at it here from the other angle, we can see this absurdly rounded door here that we really need to take care of. These would have been the original exterior doors. We did find 2 more of them, so they would have gone there and there to fill that gap. It also makes this random door at the end of the hallway make more sense, because we have this door down here at the ground level going from one room of the kitchen to the other. So why is there this older wooden door here? And originally that would have been their access from the engawa to the other kitchen room, but this would have been their access to this room without having to go outside and into it from that doorway. Now we'll get to the cinder block structures a little later, all of which we want to remove, but thankfully you can see if you look closely here where the pickle room meets the second kitchen room, it looks like we have still the original exterior wall fully intact, just hidden by this cinder block structure. Now here is the cinder block pickle room structure from the other side, and it's just super cool. Again, I don't think it's going to show up on this video, but I'm really proud of whoever did this for not destroying the original exterior wall when they built this. So it actually has a little bit of space. It's not even physically connected that I can see in any way. So when we do get around to removing this structure, right now we're using it for storage, and even though it's not pretty, we're very appreciative of it. But when we do remove it, that will be amazing to see what's behind there. Now, I think I misspoke earlier and said we want to get rid of all the cinder block structures, but with all the work that we've done getting Evan's honeybee workshop ready, we are actually going to keep this one here, which is the former garage. It's actually the only room in this house that we've done any sort of remodeling work to, and we're really happy with it as a honeybee workshop. It's sort of hard to see this little angle cut right there, but I just noticed it the other day and got to thinking, I wonder if that's a roof line or if that's just a coincidence. Then sure enough, we found an old photo, and it really does look like there used to be a small peaked roof, tile roof structure here where this garage stands now. Now moving on to the other cinder block structure that we don't like, but for now is serving a purpose, is this one right here. It's angled strange. We don't know if it was built that way or what happened at the history of this structure, but we can see from historic photos that there also used to be something with a small tile roof right where that exists now. Just to imagine how much better it would look if you could actually see the front of the house from this view while you're driving up to it, instead of that cinder block structure blocking the whole front door and all those beautiful glass windows. So this is still really confusing to me because the oldest photos that we have of the house seem to show that this bump out was already here, but if you look closely, there's some inconsistencies. For one thing, I just noticed when I was studying the roof line from a distance that these two blues are slightly different. They're also a different texture. And it seems like the original slate blue and the original wood panels here go into the wall. However, the rest of the house has this stone foundation that the boards are sitting on. And this little bump out does also have that stone foundation. It just also has some bricks on top of it. So this slightly different color and texture, gray looking blue, only exists on the outside of the office room. So let's take a look inside. This is the room here. I've been organizing, so it's got a bunch of stuff in it, but it's a small 3 tatami mat room that was used as the office. It's got this big tansu dresser. It's got a safe inside. We've got some certificates and the photo of the white puppy hanging up here. Now you'll notice this is the only other room of the house that has this very simple, it looks like just plywood sheets up on the ceiling, and it's the only room of the house that has it on the walls. Looking up on top of the tansu here, we can see that at the center of the room it changes from one plaster to another, and there also seems to be some plywood sheets tucked back behind there that of course we haven't had a chance to take a closer look at. So maybe this room was bumped out from there to there, or maybe there was some damage actually. I just thought of that. Maybe the room needed to be repaired at some point. Because again, it's strange that the oldest photos of the house seem to show this as being constructed this way, but there's so many weird little signs that it was modified significantly. And the only other thing I want to point out is that these two windows are the only two windows of this house with that double vertical wood on the wood and glass frames there. So they are unique windows in the house.
Yeah, I can see all the way through the house.
And while we're up here, I just wanted to show you this little interesting piece in the plaster here. Now this peaked part of the roof that Evan is standing on, this we believe was part of the 1955 renovation when it first became a ryokan. This is covering the bathroom, which has 2 stalls, and the shower room. And you can see here that they chipped away at the plaster in order to build that peaked roof. So that's another little sign that you can look for. So the rest of the house and the front of the house has this stacked tile flat across. And then where they've added this peak, you can see they've chipped away at the plaster and it doesn't have those stacked tiles. Being up here on the roof gives us a little bit of an opportunity to look closer where the white 1955 expansion meets the yellow 1957 expansion. And another little tiny hint is that those vertical slat wooden boards have a horizontal board on top of them, and those don't quite line up. Another little mystery that we haven't fully figured out yet is that these 2 sinks are in the oldest photos that we have. We've got a photo shot through this door, so this window is open and we can see the sinks, the 2 sinks with those cute little tiles in the background. But there's some interesting things about this little section of the house, notably that these are rails for additional sliding doors on the top, but there's no door rail on the bottom. Also, if the sinks were original, I don't know how there would be sliding doors here, so we haven't really figured out what this part of the house looked like originally. We do think that this whole bathroom was added on because it is a cinder block wall. This is the little peaked roof that Evan was on top earlier, added on to the original portion of the house that was built in 1940. These windows are also a little funny. Evan has pointed out that they don't quite fit into this space. So it looks like they did some sort of a little bit of ramshackle work to get these windows to fit here. Also, this wall here in the bathroom, one of the old photos has a nice round window in this wall, but there's no sign of it left now. On the other side of the wall, there's currently a outhouse there that's just sort of tacked onto the outside of the wall. That's going to be really easy to take apart probably this winter, but we would love to know what's going on with this. Now here in this hallway, we're also seeing the white plaster, which signifies the 1955 expansion. This is the outside of that little sink bump out we were looking at. Here you see the outhouse tacked up on the outside of the bathroom room there. And I'm not sure if you can see up under that eave, but it's definitely just an exposed cinder block structure for the bathroom there. This little wooden post here with the little roof on it, this didn't show up until the photos in the 60s or 70s. And our contractor who came here to tour the house with us before we purchased it, he did say that it's a very special Japanese wood, and so it's something to be cherished. However, all of our early photos do not have that structure there, so it wasn't added until significantly later. And it's at such a level that we bump our heads all the time when we're walking underneath it. So that's probably going to go, and we're just going to have to find a different way to display that wood. We're going to wrap the video here for today, but there are many, many more things to show you. I think the best way to show all those little details will be as we go through the renovation process. Of course, we want to remodel the house historically, but there's a real question of what historical actually means. When a house like this was very different in 1940 as it was in the 50s and the 60s. All of those are historic versions of the house. So as we go through and figure out what it is that we want to do to this house, how we want to bring it back to its former beauty, we have various different phases to choose from. So thanks for joining us for this conversation. We've got a lot more subscribers the last few weeks, which is great, and feel free to continue the conversation down below in the comments. Please feel free to let us know how you found our channel, or what you found most interesting about this video, or just what you find interesting about our channel in general. I do definitely listen to people and enjoy chatting with y'all, so we tend to base our videos on what we're doing at the time, which is why our topics sort of bounce around. But I'm always happy to cater videos towards what it is that you guys are most interested in. This weekend we've got another live stream planned, this time in a different room of the house. So feel free to pop over to the live videos tab and you can see what time it'll be airing in your time zone. So if you can't make it during the time that we're going to be having our little live chat, then you can go ahead and leave your questions ahead of time and we'll do our best to answer them. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you this weekend. Who's that? Bosco, it's the neighbor. It's recycling day.